Okay, in this video we're going to be looking at market approaches to aggregate supply. So as opposed to the government intervening, how can the free market help to promote aggregate supply? And how can freeing up the market in terms of removing government intervention sometimes be beneficial to our long-term productive capacity? So in terms of market-based approaches, we're looking at policies to boost aggregate supply that focus on the power of markets to achieve efficiency in aggregate supply. So it's about removing government intervention to help expose businesses, industries and markets to more competition, which would help to boost efficiency and boost our productive capacity in the long term. So it's removing government intervention and freeing up businesses is what we're talking about here. So some examples would be deregulation of the labour market, so removing unfair dismissal laws, for example, basically making it easier for businesses to sack unproductive workers, which then has a flow-on effect from workers being more productive, having more incentive to increase their skill base so that they're not likely to get sacked. Privatisation of government business enterprises, so about not the government running markets but allowing the free market and more competition within individual markets. Reductions in taxes, so reducing company and income taxes can help to free the market up and encourage investment and encourage businesses to workers to be more productive, and removing other government regulations. So that may include red tape and compliance costs, getting rid of unnecessary regulation that hurts businesses' competitiveness. So many of these regulations were in place to improve equity. So like minimum wages, for example, are designed to promote equity. Occupational health and safety laws are more about trying to promote safety. But removing some of these can often hurt equity. But removing income and company taxes, for example, they provide incentive for individuals to be more entrepreneurial and work harder, and also provide more incentive for companies to invest. So reducing government intervention there in the form of taxes can promote both labour productivity and capital productivity if we've got more incentive to invest. This should lead to increased productivity and efficiency and boost our productive capacity. Deregulation of the labour market, so getting rid of government involvement in the setting of wages and conditions, like removing the minimum wage, helps ensure that wages are determined purely on market forces, which also means that you're getting paid purely based on your contribution to the production process. So there's more incentive to get an education. There's more incentive to work productively because there's a stronger link between performance and your wage. So deregulation of the labour market is another way that we can free up, allow the market to be more flexible and hopefully promote greater productivity. This should help to reduce real unit labour costs, so our wages divided by productivity, and increase our productive capacity. The costs and benefits of market approaches to boost aggregate supply. These market approaches are generally positive for efficiency, but they can come at the expense of equity and fairness. There's often a trade-off between equity and efficiency. Things like removing the minimum wage can make businesses lower firms' cost of production and make them more efficient. Occupational health and safety laws, when they're too stringent, it can reduce firms' productivity, as well as environmental laws, but they can often expose us to either increased environmental damage or, in many cases, reduce equity in the distribution of income. These regulations often, by removing these regulations, it can often hurt vulnerable members of society, which includes low-income earners. Low-skilled workers can suffer. There may be more pollution, which decreases our quality of life. So market-based approaches therefore need to strike a balance between increasing aggregate supply through promoting productivity and efficiency, but also ensuring they don't erode our living standards over time and don't lead to too inequitable a distribution of income. So just one example of how a market-based policy can achieve a more flexible labour market and improve efficiency in the allocation of resources. So how can a market-based policy, so you need to talk about one policy that's designed to reduce government intervention, how can it achieve a more flexible labour market and improve efficiency in the allocation of resources? So you need to understand what's meant by a flexible labour market. You're getting 0.5 marks for understanding a market-based policy. So any policy that is about removing government intervention. So getting rid of the minimum wage, removing unfair dismissal laws, deregulating the labour market. 1 mark for demonstrating understanding of efficiency in the allocation of resources. So define what that means. And 2 marks for explaining a clear link between a specific market-based policy and efficiency in the allocation of resources. So market-based policies typically involve the government removing regulations and allowing market forces to achieve a more efficient outcome, or simply allowing markets to operate without intervention. So you start off your answer with a clear understanding of what's meant by market-based approaches about getting rid of government intervention in the market. In the case of labour markets, this might involve the government removing regulations such as unfair dismissal laws, which would give employers greater flexibility to easily dismiss employees, while such a policy will have negative implications for equity. It would have the potential to lift labour productivity as it increases the fear of dismissal for existing employees. So you've provided a clear example of the government removing regulations as your example, and how it promotes flexibility because it allows firms to get rid of unproductive workers, which should eventually boost labour productivity. For example, some employers are likely to increase their intensity or effort in the knowledge that dismissal is much more easily achieved for underperformance. In addition, such an approach enables employers to more easily dismiss those employees who are relatively unproductive. This should lead to an increase in labour productivity and a more technically efficient allocation of resources in the economy, because our existing labour resources are more likely to producing output at maximum productivity and lowest costs. So you've explained what's meant by market policies, you've used your example of unfair dismissal laws, and then you've explained how that's likely to boost productivity in the workforce because of the fear of getting sacked, and then linked it to achieving a more technically efficient allocation of resources in the labour market. We'll talk about strengths and weaknesses in the next